Hi, Gina. Welcome back.
Hello again.
In this session, in part two, we're talking about finding your genius. So, in part one, we talked about reconnecting back to your creative power so that you have that ability to understand your desires and your joys, and you can gently start moving away from what you have realized isn't working that well for you, and you can begin to find or understand what might work a little bit better. And connecting to your creative power will help you with that transitional process. And you kind of have to set the stage to allow yourself to find your genius. And I'm curious to hear from you. What do you even, how would you define
Hmm.
genius, somebody's individual genius? What does that mean to you?
The simplest way I define genius is it's your innate talent. So it's what you were born with and what you do naturally, exceptionally well. We talked in the earlier episode about how at 11 years old, I was coaching my mother out of her spirituality and empowerment books. That's natural talent. That's not something somebody ever taught me. It truly is my genius zone to be a coach and to sit with people and to illuminate the wisdom that's inside them to support them to bring forth their best. So that is in essence what genius is it's your natural innate talent.
How would you describe strengths or skills
Hmm.
that play into that?
At different times, I feel we're called forth to call out different parts of ourselves.
Mm.
Um, Different parts of us evolve over our life. It's not this perfect. It's always this one thing. But the things that have always been with me have been coaching, um,
Mm.
spirituality, and helping people connect to spirituality. Um, Cultivating community, bringing people together. And like in terms of specific skills, I would say what I hold is I literally have an intuition to read people's genius. I can see it very clearly.
Mm.
Sometimes it's very obvious right away. Sometimes it takes a little time, a little understanding of
Mhm.
someone. But I have a skill of reading people's genius. I also have a skill of being able to read the patterns in people that are holding them back. I
Mm.
can make connections between like their childhood issues and why they're not moving forward in the way that they want to now. I can piece those things together. In law, we call it issue spotting. Like you can spot the issues and then help people resolve them. So, um, I also just have this ability. Like I'm a reflector. So, um, people, I'm kind of like what you would say is a mirror for people. We can't necessarily always see inside of ourselves what's going on. But when you're talking to me about it, I'm like the mirror that I help you see it. I can hear it, I can see it, I can witness it, and then I show it back to you. A lot of my job isn't to give you
Mm.
the answers, is to just tell you what I've heard you say, but maybe I've organized it for you in a way that it seems jumbled in your mind. But I'm like filtering it and just showing back to you what you've said. And then people look at me and they're always like, wow, nobody's ever understood me like that before. And it's just because I get to be
Mm.
this mirror. So those are some ways I would describe my genius in forms that I use it at this time.
Yeah, I love the way that you describe those. And they really, it's more of a gift than it is tangible.
Mm.
And so that can be hard to define. And,
Mm.
and it takes a lot of self reflection and self awareness to learn that and observe that within yourself. Do you think that everybody has a genius?
I do. Everyone has genius. I see it and I can read it very well. There's a famous Albert Einstein quote that goes something like this: everybody is a genius, but if you're a fish trying to climb a tree, but judging yourself like a monkey who can climb a tree, you will believe your whole life that you're stupid. Right.
Yeah.
So I botched the quote a little bit, but the idea is when you're a fish, you really have no business trying to climb a tree. That's not your thing to do. That's what monkeys
Mm-hmm.
do. Monkeys can like go right up there, right? But so people think they don't have genius because they're operating not in their genius.
Mm-hmm.
And life feels hard and difficult because they're doing things that are difficult for them.
Yeah.
But when we do really tap into what's innate, it no longer feels difficult. Now, when you were describing how I talked about my gifts and my genius, they do sound different than what like a college is teaching courses on,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. Mhm.
But that's a bit of the problem of our time, is that the world is trying to fit us into boxes of consumerism and the way the government wants to run, and trying to plug us into this way that it has said society should be.
Mhm.
And that's got us in this state of total disharmony and chaos right now, because
Mhm.
when we're in our genius as individuals and then come together as a collective, we create a harmony, and we don't have
Mhm.
harmony right now. That's pretty obvious.
Mhm.
So yes, everyone has genius, but not everyone is connected to it, and that's where my work comes into play, and helping people to find what that genius is.
I love that quote that you called out by Albert Einstein, because that is probably how a lot of people are feeling. That's how I felt before. And we almost select the space in which we think we want to have
Mhm.
a genius, and we
Mhm.
think that we can, work hard enough or develop enough skills and experience to create a genius of ourselves. And you might have chosen whatever space that is in because there was a natural ability there, but that's like you and law. You were good at it. Like,
Yes.
you excelled in your classes, you received a job opportunity before you even graduated for a job that didn't even exist because you were so good at it. And so it would be easy to say from the outside that something within that was your genius. But what is, now that you've found your real genius, your
Yes.
true genius, what's the difference in feeling between
Mhm.
the two?
Mhm. So you're correct in saying that there was something connected to my genius in the work that I did do as a lawyer. It wasn't totally disconnected, because at its heart, being an attorney is being a counselor for somebody. They call you a
Mm,
counselor of law. Someone is in a situation that they have no understanding of how the legal system works, and you're their counselor through that process. And I very much felt a reverence to that part of the role. Like my clients,
mm,
they were in legal trouble and had no idea what was going to happen in the process, and
mhm,
they could feel a lot of pressure of prosecutors and police, and I was this person that was there on their side, looking out for them, taking care of them. So there was a lot of fit for me in that, which is a lot of what I do as a coach. Um, a big skill set in being a lawyer is issue spotting. And, it's very common people come to lawyers with all these problems that they don't know what to do with. And it's up to the lawyer to say, okay, let's start here. And this is how we will resolve it. And then we go here. And this is how we will resolve it. That's a lot of what I do with my clients. As they come, people say to me all the time, especially early on in sessions, they'll come and they'll just talk for like 5-10 minutes and just talk, 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 talk. And then they'll be like, God, that must have been just, I know, I was just rambling on and on and on. And I'm like, no, you weren't at all. Because while they were talking, I was processing it all and spotting the issues and realizing where they need to start, where I can guide them and direct them. So there is a lot of parallel. I didn't go to medical school. That probably wouldn't have been a fit at
right,
all. But there
right.
was something about becoming a lawyer that was appropriate, and I could do well in that world.
Mhm,
Um, but where it really wasn't my genius and where it really fell out of alignment was that I spent so much of my time in my intellect, in this like fighting, competing energy. And it was inside of a system, the legal system, that is about punishing people. And my job was to fight against a harsh, inappropriate punishment. Um, and so for me, a lot of what didn't work was the environment and the ultra masculine setting in which I was operating.
mm,
And so I do a lot of the same kinds of things. I also do a lot of public speaking. That was a big part of my legal career. I was a courtroom lawyer in the courtroom all the time. And, that's very natural for me. A lot of people are very
mhm.
uncomfortable with it. For me, it's very natural. So I was in my genius zone in a lot of ways in my legal career, just not the right setting.
Interesting. Okay, okay. When I think of my own experience, I also recognize that there are bits and pieces of my work that do feel natural. There's a reason why I chose the path that I chose. But for me, I feel that environmental misalignment as well. Investments is a very masculine industry. So I totally connect with you on that. And the other piece that was missing for me, and I'm curious if your clients experience this as well, it's like, it's just not exciting,
Yeah.
like it takes a lot of effort to force myself to do certain things that I think I should do to keep up with
Yes.
other people who are excited about, the topic or the industry or the focus or whatever it might be. Like maybe it's not
Yeah.
so off and difficult, but it's just like not lighting them up.
Yeah, there's a few things that need to match to be really truly operating in your genius zone.
Okay.
So there's the skills, right? Which we were talking
Mhm.
about. Like I was using a lot of the genius skills that are innate to me in law,
Yeah.
but it wasn't the right fit because the environment wasn't the right fit. And
Mhm.
also, what you're starting to allude to, I didn't have a passion for that subject area. Like, I could
Mhm.
get excited about liberation of a human being. Yes, I like
Mhm.
constitutional arguments I could get into because I care about freedom. But what my truest passion is the empowerment of women. And so when my work shifted into that direction, which my second career was running a women's nonprofit organization that was about empowerment, my coaching today is a lot about women's empowerment. It was like hitting that right passion area that then my
Mhm.
genius could thrive even more because it's like the right skills, the right subject matter, the right environment, the right culture, like all of those pieces will really be what will feel like you're lit up, alive, and doing the work that you were born to do.
Yes. Wow. That sounds like magic. That's
Mm.
so wonderful. And you already said everybody has a genius. So hopefully, many of the listeners have listened to part one of reconnecting to their creative power. So they might have a sense of what they're good at, what they're excited by. They might have a
Mhm.
little bit of an idea or a little bit more clarity. But when you start talking about what is your genius, I think of, you know, somebody like Kanye West. Honestly, I actually remember I watched his documentary that was on Netflix, I don't know, 2 years ago or whenever that was. It was a 3-part series, and whatever you think about Kanye, he has a talent. He's connected to his genius. He's
Yes.
connected to his genius, and he
Hmm.
talks about it a lot about how he receives messages. The
Yes.
words come through him.
That's right.
He's not forcing anything. It's a natural ability that he has, and
Hmm.
he's extremely talented. When I watched that,
Yeah.
I was fascinated and envious.
Yes.
Like I want to feel that
Yes.
in the way that he feels it. And I want to find my Kanye
Hmm.
talent.
That's right.
So when I think of his level of talent and skill, is that is that what you mean by everyone has a genius too? Like to
Hmm.
that level?
Yes,
Like,
yes, yes. So what he's talking about is he starts channeling the information. Like you are
mm-hmm.
a channel for something specific in this world
Mm,
that is yours to give. And in
mm-hmm.
our society, we really give it to like musical artists or
Yes.
athletes that we see all
Yes.
these geniuses. But it,
Mm-hmm.
it 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 exists in so many different forms. I really believe my biggest genius is I'm a channel for people understanding what their genius is. I
Mm,
really believe, and I could just talk endlessly and on about that. And I keep, getting clearer on the tools and the way to discover it and how to find it in yourself. But it's just something that it's how I work. I observe the world this way and I just receive information and it comes out of me and I'm in sessions with clients and I'm channeling information for them. It pours through me with ease because who I am and how I was built by God, the divine, the infinite, whatever created me to be a channel for this thing. So
mm.
when you can find your genius, you become this like endless, untapped resource for that which is yours to share. Yes, I believe we all have that ability. And he's at
Mm.
a more advanced level, right? He's not somebody who's like, who am I and what's my purpose? No, he knows
Mhm.
this is his gift. He's very clear. So that's a part of there's levels of understanding your genius. So that's number one is like identifying what those gifts are what are the right environments for you to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is, then moving that into your career path, not just having it be something you know about yourself, but
Mm.
turning this into, him becoming a musician,
Yep.
and making that his path, me becoming a coach and making that my path. That's another phase. And then there truly becomes this phase that you were just talking about. I would say that's level 3 with Kanye, which is like, no, you are just a channel for it. You know how to tap it, you know how to connect it, and
Mm.
you flow with it. And I would say, that's something that I can do now as well. But we all have that capacity, given the time to get to know ourselves, to make this our how we spend our lives full time, give our hearts to, and then
Yeah.
tap in as a channel.
So it's a gift that you develop. Like you have to identify it, become aware of it, and then you begin to develop it over your lifetime.
I would say it a little differently.
Oh, okay.
You're born with it. It is a
Okay.
natural talent. So there's natural
Okay.
proclivity in this area, but then you
Yeah.
cultivate that gift.
Cultivate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Perfect. I'm so glad that you made that distinction because
Mhm.
that makes so much more sense and feels so much more comforting
Mm.
that it's already within me and that
Mhm. That's right.
it's already something that people are probably doing in their day-to-day life and just
Mhm.
aren't aware of or
Mhm.
haven't cultivated, like you said. So how do people begin to identify their
Mhm.
own genius?
Yeah. I'm inspired in this moment by there's this Michelangelo quote. So Michelangelo, not yeah, Michelangelo, who created the statue of David, which is a very famous statue in Italy of a man who's, it's very, very large and very, like, just beautiful figure. It's very stunning to see in person. I've seen it live. And so when Michelangelo was carving the statue of David, his famous quote was, I had this block of stone and I was just being this channel to carve away all the pieces of that stone that were not David.
Mm.
And so he was being a channel for something that was meant to come through him, but it was by taking away what wasn't meant to be there. And so that right now is the work a lot of us are doing. What am I being in this world that's not aligned for me? Like me, okay, I'm a lawyer and I'm really good at it, and my clients really like me, and my firm's really happy with me. But I don't like walking into a police station and having to go toe to toe fighting with a cop about my client.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's not authentic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could I do it? Could I play that tough role? Sure. But that's not me. I'm
Hmm.
more of someone who wants to create peace and harmony and love in the world, right? And so when I knew law wasn't my forever path, all I could say, all I could say was, I just know I want to be on the proactive side of creating a better world for people. And that's all I knew. So it's like you just recognize what's not a fit. The very beginning, you recognize what doesn't feel right, what feels out of alignment,
Hmm.
and then you're going to know what you're going to know piece by piece. So that
Mm.
always has been important to me. It's like I've always wanted to be a part of that's part of the environment. Like the work that I'm doing has to be about creating a better world. I don't want
Hmm.
to did I create a better world for my clients by being their lawyer? Sure. But
Hmm.
ultimately being inside the criminal justice system, which has a lot of toxicity and poison inside of it and how it runs,
Hmm.
I was not creating a better world there.
Hmm. Yeah. And peeling away those layers opens up space in your mind and in
Yes.
your environment to then w- connect with a new way of doing things. Like how what
Mm-hmm.
then is step 2, I guess. You've
Yes.
peeled away,
Yes. Yes.
and what comes next? A lot of
So,
emptiness,
mm-hmm.
openness.
So there are some clues to what your genius is. Well,
Yeah.
we can talk about a few of them here
Yeah. Oh, that'd be
to give
great.
people some insight of what to be looking for. And it's going to
Mhm.
be some of it's going to possibly be surprising,
Mm.
but it is going to also feel right. Right? It's going to like I like
Mm.
one of the words I really like to use is when something resonates with you, it's like you're like, oh yes, that feels like truth. It
Yeah.
resonates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not in your head, you're not trying to figure it out. You're like, no, it vibes as truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm these clues that I can share about what your genius is are going to sound opposite of everything we think, but are going to resonate as truth.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give us potentially three. I have three that are at the forefront of my mind. Three clues of what your genius is.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is that which is your genius is fun and easy for you. Now, I want to hear your reaction to that.
Fun and easy are two words that I've been warming up to when it comes to, and again, I'm thinking about this in the context of work
Yep.
and career,
Yep.
because those are not words that I've associated with work and career. And
That's
probably a
right.
lot of people listening
That's right.
are somewhere on that spectrum,
Yes.
closer to where I was. And I'm, like I said, warming up to it and
Yes.
desperately want to believe that that's accessible.
Yes. Yes. So I'm going to explain a little bit about why this is the case to maybe
Mm-hmm.
help bridge this intellectually. So your innate talent is your genius. And so if it's innate, you can just do it with ease. It's not hard for you. Albert Einstein, the renowned genius to all of us, physics was his genius, right? He could do that with ease. It would not be easy for me, but for him it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Me, part of my genius is inspiring people, getting up in front of audiences. Some people, that's like their biggest nightmare,
Mm-hmm.
right? No, that's not their genius. It's mine,
Mm-hmm.
right? We so look outside of ourselves for what there is to do and what's good and what's meaningful that we just don't understand that what it is for us that's innate and natural and easy is actually what's our genius. If it feels hard, it's not your genius. And you may be good at it and you can do it, but then it's not your genius if it feels hard and stressful. So for example, I studied accounting in college. I did the books at the law firms I worked at. I do the books for my business now. When I was a managing director to a nonprofit, I wasn't the bookkeeper, but I had to stay on top of the finances for my chapter. But do you know how drained and tired I feel when I look at that stuff? It's hard, it's stressful, and can I balance the numbers? Do I know a lot about accounting? Yes. But it is so stressful and painful and draining for me. As opposed to when I'm sitting with a client, coaching them, unpeeling these patterns for them, seeing their genius, I'm become alive. It just flows out of me. Like you're saying with Kanye and the music, it just flows out of me.
Yeah.
I couldn't shut it off if I tried. Whereas accounting, I'm like, pushing. Okay, keep going, procrastinating.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So your genius is fun and easy for you. That's the thing that's innate and is the thing you're going to do so well. But you're right. It's this conditioning that we have about work that it's hard and it's stressful. That's because there are these outside forces that are wanting to harness people's labor, to do a certain thing. So we've all been indoctrinated in this thinking that, well, I'm smart enough, I can get an education to do it, so I'll do this work. But it doesn't feel easy and it doesn't feel fun. So it's not your genius.
Wow.
That's a big clue. That's a big clue is it's fun and easy. And to go a little further with that, okay, it's your genius. Fun and easy. Here's some clues of fun and easy. Like you geek out over it. You'd read about this stuff on your own time. You'd play, you'd talk to your friends about it. You would do it. Here is really fun and easy. You would do it for free. I'm not saying you need to, but you would. And when somebody's telling me oh, I think this is my genius, and I ask them that question, would you do it for free? They're like, well, no. I'm like, well, then it's not your genius. I'm sorry.
It's funny that you mentioned that because the other thing that came to my mind when you said it's fun and easy is, well, who would pay me for that?
Mm-hmm.
Also, because of the programming that work is supposed to be hard, it's like, if it's not hard, why would you get paid for something like that?
Mm-hmm. Right. That's a lot more of why we cannot believe our genius
Mhm.
is fun and easy, because then it's not valuable. So I'll explain a little bit about that. When it's our genius, it comes so easy to us. We assume it's that easy for other people. So we think it's not special.
Mhm.
But that's not true. Just like Albert Einstein, physics, me speaking, coaching, like that's easy for me. It's not for everyone else, right? So
Mhm.
it's this is a self exploration. So I don't expect
Mhm.
someone to like, boom, I understand my genius immediately. It's something that we begin to like allow ourselves to believe. But when you start to see this, it's so amazing. It's like, oh, everybody doesn't just know what I know. I actually know all this stuff. That's you being the channel
Mhm.
for your genius. Which
Mhm.
this starts to point to the second clue I want to share with you that's really interesting and kind of mind blowing about genius. Like it blows your mind a little that this is a genius clue. Where you get really frustrated in life and in the world is actually a clue of your genius.
Hmm.
What's your reaction to that? Of course, I'll explain it, but I want to hear your reaction first.
That it's never, resolved enough. Like the
Mm.
thing that is frustrating requires kind of like a lifetime
Mm.
of discovery and work.
Mm.
And so how could you help others with it if it's the thing that's frustrating you, you
Mm.
know?
I love the take that you had on it and that you called it a lifetime of work, because I believe that is true. When we've tapped our genius, it's going to fill us for our whole lives. We're never going to tire of it. It
Mm.
may evolve, but it's what we're going to
Mhm.
want to do over our lifetime, and there's going to be so much work to do.
Mhm.
I'm going to add a little different flavor to
Okay.
this piece about why it frustrates you. But it frustrates you because let me give an example. So something that frustrates me is if I heard somebody just complaining about their job and how much they hate what they do for a living. That's frustrating
Mhm.
for me. Why?
Mhm.
Because I know there's another way. And it's always, I mean, even when I was a lawyer, I never was like, I'm stuck here forever and, bitch, 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 bitch. No, I was always like, okay, well, I'm going to figure out my way to find what I'm really supposed to do, right? Like, I've always had this genius about me. Like, passion is our guide, find mine, go after it. So it's very frustrating for me when people aren't living that way.
Mhm.
Okay. And so where you get frustrated is a clue that that's your genius, that you know a way that a lot of other people do not.
Hmm. That's so interesting. When you put it in that context, when I zoom out and I think, what is my biggest frustration? It's when people tell me how to live. Like that there's
Mm.
one way to live,
Mm.
the best way to live, or that you have to do this to live like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny when I think of it in that context because all these conversations are trying to prove that wrong.
That's right. So there's a genius there for you. There's a passion and a spark, and I know there's another way,
Mhm.
and I want to know it, and I want to help other people know it, and I do know it, and you're like
Mhm.
discovering it as you go. Right,
Yeah,
right,
right,
right.
right. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a
Mm-hmm.
long I think it'll be a long-term discovery and this is
Mm-hmm.
kind of my experimentation ground of it,
Mm-hmm.
of uncovering that and learning to believe it and live it and do it myself. Like I haven't
Mm-hmm.
mastered anything, but
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of an
That's
opening
right.
and a place to talk about it.
That's right. So I was saying there's
Yeah.
degrees, there's levels of understanding your genius, and you're in the
Yeah.
early phase of that. But
Mhm.
there's going to be a time that you're going to be like me and you're just out like a total thought leader on the subject matter because you have taken the time to understand it. But it
Yeah.
often first shows up as a frustration in life.
Yeah.
And what happens though is the switch flips at some point where you realize, like, oh, I'm so frustrated with them because they don't know what I know. So I just need to start to have compassion for them because I can start to teach them. I can start to guide them. I am this source to
Yeah.
give them something they don't have yet awakened inside of them. right? So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
becomes something that frustrates you until you realize, like, oh, this is the place I can help people.
Mhm.
This is the way I can
That is so
contribute.
interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. That's such a clear clue when you
Mm-hmm.
lay it out in that
Mm-hmm.
way.
There's another clue that I think is fun, and it's there's so many of them, but I'm just really making sure I share the one that's most aligned for this audience. The one that came forward to share as the third one is it's lineage. So when I say
Mm.
lineage, um, think about the tribal days. People received a role in the tribe, but there was a lot of basis in their natural proclivities. Like you were the hunter, you were the medicine man, you were the, child rearer, you were the fire starter, you were the ceremony holder, right? Like based on what was natural and innate. And um and it was often passed down, this is what the father has done, and so then this skill set is passed on to the son, or maybe it skips a generation and it's the grandson. And
Mhm.
there is something to our genetics and our lineage that shapes our gifts, and it's often a big aha moment with my clients when I start asking them about their families, their parents, their grandparents, and whether their parents did it for a living or not. It could be a parent's passion, it could be their job. You start to see the connection that you actually are a piece of them. And so it's another piece of proof of what your genius is. Like, oh my gosh, there's all these teachers in my family. Of course, I'm a teacher.
Mm.
My gift of prayer, that is something that I've really embraced in the last several years, and as part of my genius. I only learned recently that my great grandmothers on both sides, my mother and father, they were prayer healers. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know this, but that's kind of how the lineage thing goes. Is you're like, you start to see the connection of like, oh my goodness, like this was a gift of my grandmother or my great grandmother, right? And so gifts get passed on through lineage. So it becomes a confirmation of like, oh, yeah, this is just something that we have in my family. So that's another big clue, is looking back in your lineage.
That is so interesting. I can't believe the connection in your own
Yes,
family.
that one blew my mind. That one blew
That
my
is
mind.
so wow, wow,
Hmm.
wow. And that makes me think too of those gifts that you were practicing when you were a child, and then how that's so connected to your parents and their spirituality, and then what you just shared. How do we see that in kids before
Mm,
they start, adopting all of these beliefs and
yeah.
pressures?
Oh, I love that question so much. And I love when parents are open to this,
Hmm.
because I see a lot of the opposite. I see a lot of parents wanting to tell their children what they should do or be. And that happened in my family.
Hmm.
And again, I don't make it wrong. It's all my perfect path. But I mean, if you watch your child and see what they gravitate towards, the best thing you can do is encourage it. And you may not, as their parent, or aunt, uncle, whatever role you have in their lives, you may not see how it's going to be a career. Just like my dad couldn't have been like, oh, Gina, you're going to be a great coach someday. No, it wasn't a
Right,
thing. Okay, it
right,
wasn't a thing
right.
back then. Um, so it's like, don't try to figure out how they're going to do it, but trust that they were born with a gift that the world needs, and that
Mm.
somehow, if you give them access to their creative power,
Hmm.
and encourage them to be authentic to who they are, the path will open. They will find their way to make that their career, or their contribution to the world.
Okay. So once somebody, starts to answer these questions, digs into the clues that you gave, it sounds like you're encouraging them to just start experimenting with it,
Mm,
and that you're not going to be Kanye, level Kanye
yes,
on day
exactly.
1, and that
Exactly.
it's a lifelong practice. So
Hmm.
how do your clients kind of internalize that day to day when they start to recognize it, or you even call
Yes.
out their genius? And they want to run with it. Like, I'm sure
Hmm.
that they're excited and they start to feel it within themselves. What does that process look like for them?
Yeah, so there's first identifying what it is. And then when I work with a client who's wants to say, wow, I would like to turn this into my career path,
Mhm.
I'd like to move this direction. What I encourage is first a testing period where you're not putting money pressure on it and trying to immediately make it your source of revenue. You go out into the world
Mm.
and you test it. Um, and there's a really beautiful story about my own career path. So my first transition from law into nonprofit management was just me testing, and then it added up to a job I never would have even known was something available for me. So when I was a lawyer, I started just taking on some passion projects and doing things that felt fun and that I was curious about. And I
Mhm.
began to explore, um, and they involved organizing a women's dinner once a month, organizing a women's gathering that was about self empowerment. Um, I organized a fundraiser for a boys and girls club because I was really curious about like charity and empowering others and doing that through raising money. And I had done all these things over the course of many months. And then what happened was I was having dinner with a girlfriend one night, and she said to me, she said, there's this organization that I was involved in when I lived in California. It's called Step Up Women's Network, and they're going to be opening an office in Chicago. They sent out an announcement, and you're doing all these things with women and empowerment. I think you'd really be interested in getting involved. And when she said that, I was like, my eyes like bulged out of my head. I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to run an organization like that. I didn't even know I could
Mm.
do that. But all
Wow.
these things I had been doing in my spare time, testing, playing, trying,
Yeah.
suddenly added up to there's an organization that does all these things I was just doing for fun. And at the moment they weren't even hiring. I just heard about it and I was like, well, I'm going to go talk to them and see when they're going to hire somebody. And 6 months later they hired me as their managing director.
Wow.
But it is about like going out and testing and playing, not necessarily trying to get a result, but to prove to yourself that the world needs this gift that you've
Hmm.
discounted, that maybe people had you put away in favor of something that would earn more money or whatever the case
Hmm.
was, or be more stable. Um, so you have to give yourself the time and the space to go out and test your idea in the world. Or maybe some people might have a very specific sense of what they do want to do. Let's say you say, gosh, I'd love to be a full-time podcaster. That would be amazing. But it's not very smart to like day one expect you're going to just start a podcast and make all your money and quit your job. No, no, no.
Right.
You got to go out and test it and see if you're any good at it. Do I even like it? What kind of value can I add? And once you have established all of that, now you could be like, wow, I know my value. I can go talk to sponsors and start to raise money and
Hmm.
start,
Yeah.
or start to have a paid subscription for this podcast because I know what it's going to give people. So you need that period of time to get to deepen in your genius and understand it so that you can turn it into a career path.
Okay. Okay. It sounds like there's a lot of patience involved with it and
Mm.
allowing it to unfold when it's ready. And that role found you. That's what's so
That's
fun to
right.
hear as well, is once you opened yourself up to this new possibility and these new ideas, people will see that and help you
Yes.
and look out for you. And
That's right.
however you want to believe it, whether it's through faith it found you or others around you start noticing, it found you. And it
Mhm.
opportunities will show themselves as you begin to take action.
Yes.
And as we close out this part two of, I love this series that we're doing. I'm so excited. This is
So
just
great.
such useful information.
Mm.
I want to also call out, along with the patience piece, is there's a lot wrapped up in this emotionally and mentally. I mean, I said myself in this conversation that I have an assumption that work should be hard, and to be paid for something, it should be challenging and difficult. And I think that once you start to discover even strengths within yourself that do feel like innate geniuses, there's still doubt and limiting beliefs
Yes.
that come up with it. I just, as a kind of like closing commentary, I'd love to hear your thought on how we continue to grapple with that. That's the
Hmm.
lifelong piece too, I
Hmm.
think. Or it might not be, but I just love to hear your thoughts on some of those limiting beliefs that might come up even when you do begin to identify your genius?
Yes. So I have a coaching process that is about helping someone literally take their genius that they've discovered, their vision of what they want to do, and then turn it into their career. I have a process for that. And
Mm.
so what I've recognized is that there's the identification of the genius and what you want to do. And that's exciting and that's amazing, right? But then the
Mhm.
next question is always this: is anybody going to want to pay me for that?
Mhm.
Does anybody else care about that? I don't know. I don't know if anybody else cares about that. It comes up every time.
Yeah.
And so you're not done when you discover your genius. It is next about I call phase 1 vision. It's like getting the vision of what your genius is and what you really want to do in the world. Phase
Mhm.
2 is called value. That's when you're going out and testing and you're seeing that what you have to offer truly offers value to other people. When you're testing it, so you take your gift, you share it with the world, and then you start to see back the way it changes people's lives, the difference it makes. You're not just like, I'm doing this, pay me $400 an hour for it. No, you're doing it and you're seeing how it's changing people's lives. And then when you're ready to make that transition, the third phase I call voice, to start articulating and channeling out into the world. This is what I have to offer. This is what I can bring. You're
Mhm.
sharing it and you can tell people your vision and your value. And then it's like they want to pay you for it. Because you are
Mm.
now able to understand it at a depth. It's not just like, I don't know, accounting, like pay me, $1,500 to do my tax return. Well, that's
Yeah.
like a market rate, let's say, right? Well, when your
Mhm.
genius is something that's still evolving in the world and maybe it's not exactly what's been done before, guess who sets the value? You and the community of people that you're sharing it with. So it does
Mhm.
require time and space to understand the value of what it is. And that's, again, it's
Mhm.
just part of the layering that goes into, if you want to have a life that is about authenticity, you want a career
Mhm.
path that is your truest gifts. This is what it takes. This is the education program required, the deprogramming required in order to work in your genius zone.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing to hear. And our part 3 is, it flows perfectly because once you identify your genius, one of the thoughts that I would have that would pop into my mind that I have thought before is like, where does this fit
Mm-hmm.
within our current structures? Thinking that it has to fit, that
Mm-hmm.
I guess would be a limiting belief or an
Mm-hmm.
assumption. And so I'm excited to talk to you in our next part 3 about masculine and feminine and approaches to work, approaching work in a new way,
Yes.
bringing in more of the feminine and divine feminine, because,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, coaching didn't exist back when you pursued law or when you were in 8th grade and your dad announced that you were going to be a lawyer. And a lot of careers that you're helping your clients develop don't exist. And I,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that that is very, feminine to allow yourself to see something
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't exist yet and bring that into reality and into 3D tangible, something that you can touch and offer and charge and support yourself with.
Yes.
And so I'm excited to talk about your thoughts on that and how other people can begin opening their mind to a new way to approach work.
It's
So
great.
thank
Very,
you.
very well set up. That's exactly what we're going to
Oh,
do in the next episode.
yay, thank goodness. Thank you so much, Gina. I'll talk
My honor
soon.
to be here.
Hi, me again. If you made it all the way through, I'd bet you're pretty serious about moving the needle to align with your dreams and feel good in your own life. Good for you. Before you leave, I would love to hear a takeaway that you got from this episode in the reviews. That'll help me tailor conversations to be more useful to you in the future. Okay, you're the best. Thank you.